December 19th, 2001. Yes, I was in line at midnight at Forum 8 Theater in Columbia, Missouri, in line with a whole bunch of other people, not in costume yet, for the opening of The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. 3 hours later, I knew that my life was changed, that there was before Lord of the Rings and there was after Lord of the Rings. I missed Star Wars by 5 years, but I imagine this is what a lot of people felt in 1977, lining up around the block and leaving Star Wars A New Hope for the first time. Like this was my thing. The Lord of the Rings. I subsequently saw the other two in line at midnight. Actually, they invented a new showtime because of these movies and started showing the release date at 11 p.m. the day before they were supposed to be released. I saw them with the current pastor up in Kearney United Methodist Church, Adam Musto. So I knew that my life was changed forever by the filmmaking of Peter Jackson, who we just saw, adapting the fictional work of J.R.R. Tolkien. The movies introduced me to the world. I had not read the books before the movies came out, and then I went into the novels. This is my collection right here. I finished the novels and made it into the collection of notes put together by the author's son, which is an entirely different volume of published work. And then there are countless unpublished works for J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. That one's called The Silmarillion, and honestly, I've never actually made it all the way through in one sitting. I have read all of The Silmarillion, but only over many, many years. Lord of the Rings, Tolkien didn't invent fantasy fiction. He was himself inspired by King Arthur and the Green Knight and Knights of the Round Table. He was inspired by the fairy tales of Scotland and Scottish author George MacDonald. But the completeness of this world, the totality of this world that he created, and the success of the novels quickly shot Lord of the Rings into the ultimate example of fantasy literature. Everything else that has happened since owes it to the Lord of the Rings. All of the Narnias, which actually they were great friends, J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. All of the Narnias and Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time and Highlanders and Dungeons and Dragons and even Harry Potter's come eventually back to Lord of the Rings. And I know that there are several people in here right now who have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. That haven't read or seen or read or seen any spare second of any of this stuff. That is absolutely inexplicable to me personally at this point in your life, that you have not seen The Lord of the Rings in any way. But there are many classic things that I have no interest in, so it's okay. I am going to try to do this as quickly as possible and as excessively as possible. Okay. Bad guy makes bad ring. Bad ring gets lost and found by hobbits. These guys. By the way, Steve just had this in his basement. The books are mine, but this just you just had this, right? And Tamara made this. Yeah. Anyway, those are hobbits. They are halflings, little people. And so the bad ring has to be destroyed back where it was made. And so the journey of the story is the good guys, the hobbits, joined by the other 5 that we saw in the video, have to journey across the world which is about from here to Savannah, Georgia, walking to destroy the ring, and they are chased the entire time by the bad guys. That's the Lord of the Rings in a nutshell. Okay, so this is the world of elves and goblins and wizards and castles and knights, and Frodo, joined by his quests by men and elves and dwarves, his other hobbit friends. The ring is lost in this final great battle, and eventually ends up in the possession of Bilbo Baggins, and that is the action of The Hobbit, the first little novel that was written for kids, and should never have been made into a trilogy of movies, by the way. There's not enough material in it. Bilbo Baggins is the nephew of Frodo, is the uncle, the great uncle of Frodo Baggins, this guy in the middle, and he leaves him this magic ring. He figures out, with the wizard's help, that this is the bad ring from legend and lore. This ring has the power to control, to give its wearer control over Middle-earth and the world. It can only be replaced, it can only be destroyed in the fires of the volcano that forged it in the first place, which is cleverly named Mount Doom on the other side of the world. So Frodo goes to what we saw today, a council, and they decide that this ring has to be destroyed, and they immediately start fighting about who's going to do it. And then Frodo stands up. So that's the plot. That's the act. That's what happens in The Lord of the Rings. Why people love The Lord of the Rings is that J.R.R. Tolkien created an entire reality. This world has history, it has mythology, it has a creation story, it has different religions, it has different ethnicities that are all the way fleshed out. Their histories are written in the notes of J.R.R. Tolkien. He created 4 languages. He was a linguist by trade. Created 4 languages to create this story. And everyone sings all the time. And those are in the text. It's not like, and then he sung a song, and then it moves on. Then he sung a song, and there's 2 pages of hymn verse written out by Tolkien, sometimes in English, sometimes in Elvish, in the language that he created for this book. This is the example of fantasy literature because it is so complete. It is a completely contained reality created by the imagination of this man. And yes, it's orcs and goblins and wizards and trolls and dragons and castles and knights and keeps, which means a whole bunch of you will never read it. But it is that kind of story, and it is the best one. So, obviously, I can talk about this forever. I can talk about Star Wars and comic books. I know too much about this stuff. I could make a Lord of the Rings reference in every sermon I preach until my death, and I would not repeat my reference. But we can't do that. This is not Brad goes on and on about Lord of the Rings. This is a sermon inspired by Lord of the Rings. So that's the action. That's why people love it. It is such a completely created world. What we saw today was the forming of the Fellowship of the Ring, the name of the first novel. The leaders of the elves and the dwarves, the humans, and these 4 hobbits, the wizards, come together to decide what to do with the ring after they confirm that it is the ring of evil. So they come together at the Council of Elrond, and everyone here has reasons to distrust everyone else here. They have long histories of betrayal and animosity that have festered into real xenophobia between them, racism between them. Dwarves think elves are arrogant and aloof and always running away from a good fight and above everything else. Elves think dwarves are boorish and crass and always fighting. They also think they're greedy because they're miners in this world. They both think humans are weak and dumb. And nobody thinks about the hobbits at all. All the hobbits want to do is sit on their porch and smoke a pipe and eat and sing songs and garden. That's the hobbits' life. And that's all they want to do. And because they are simple, because they want a simple life, nobody even considers them it's not like they have a low opinion of the hobbits. They have no opinion of the hobbits. They're not even important enough to have an opinion on. So of course, this this is the most important meeting that has happened in 1,000 years. This ring has been lost to time. The story, the legend has grown. The prophecy of it has grown for thousands of years. And this is the most important gathering to decide what we're going to do with this ring. So obviously, immediately we start shouting at each other. We shout at each other about who needs to take it to Mordor and destroy it. We shout at each other about, well, it's really, really powerful. What if we didn't destroy it? And what if we just used it for ourselves, right? We used it for good. The dwarves know that they can't give the ring to the elves to destroy because they can't trust the elves. And the elves know that if the dwarves led the journey to Mordor, that they would just take the ring for themselves because they're greedy little elves. And then this tiny little voice says, I'll do it. This has to be done to protect that porch-sitting, pipe-smoking life that I want. This has to be done, so I'll do it. And there's this look on Gandalf's face when he first hears, I don't know if you saw it, when he first hears Frodo say, I'll do it, the admiration but also deep concern. Frodo's courage pulls this council back in the moment that this task is bigger than all of these grievances and grudges, all the petty little hurts that have happened, and all of the real, actual betrayal that has happened in the past. This isn't a border dispute or trade negotiations or resource management or who's going to get this barge up this river to feed this. This is good versus evil. This is, if we don't do anything about this, none of that matters anymore. A free and a just and a kind world for all, a world defined by self-serving, warmongering, destructive power. And all it took them to get back to that track was one small voice, insignificant in their eyes. Of course, like any of us would, one of the men, the one on the other end there, he calls Frodo Little One throughout the entire book and movie. He scruffs his hair up often. Frodo is like 30 years older than the man who does this to him, but because of his size, gets called Little One the entire movie. Okay, so what happens in these Christian communities in Asia Minor? We're up in Turkey. We're up in modern-day Turkey. Remember, the book of Revelation was written, the letter was written to the 7 churches of Asia Minor. That's where we are. We're in that circle of 7 churches. Authorized apostles would come to town. Paul, Timothy, Barnabas, Peter. They'd come to town, credentialed, they're known, and they'd come and they'd tell the story of Jesus. And they would gather a community around themselves. They would stay with that community for a while, teach people how to do this. They would appoint leaders, and then they would leave. Like Gandalf, by the way. Gandalf is gone 75% of the time. He drags this hobbit out of his shire and says, good luck, I got to go do a thing. They start these communities and then they leave. So what we think is happening in this town, Colossae, which doesn't exist anymore, this letter actually names a philosophy against which this letter is arguing. Does that make sense? Like, this, we don't have that. We don't have the philosophy. We don't have the philosophy, but we have Colossians, which is an argument against the philosophy. So the leaders start this church and they go away, and then some other teachers come in and they start weaving in some Hellenistic Greek stuff into the new Christian stuff, into the new Jewish stuff. And there's this philosophy that is taking over. The only things we know about this philosophy are in the book of Colossians. But it sounds like some kind of extreme physical self-harm had entered into the worship practices of this community. Extreme asceticism and fasting to the point of starvation. So the whole book of Colossians and this point that we read is like, no, look, that's your baptism put an end to all that stuff. You don't have to do anything to your physical self in order to enter into worship anymore. Your baptism put that physical self to death and then brought it back. That's earthly stuff, and we're not concerned about that anymore. We are gathering our energies around higher things, heavenly things. And up here on Jesus' plane, we don't do all this division and fighting and this philosophy versus that philosophy. We are all in Christ, and that makes us united. That's the argument that's happening here. I believe that we are at a point somewhere beyond politics and governance. I believe that we are somewhere beyond border disputes and trade deals and resource management. I believe that we have made it into good versus evil territory. I believe we have made it into, if good people don't come together and stand against the darkness, none of the other stuff is going to matter anymore. There is no political justification or qualification or good, or there is no policy for what's being done to the Palestinian people right now. That's good versus evil. And what's happening to them is evil, regardless of the source. There is no difference of opinion for unidentified, masked, armed militiamen taking kids out of school. That's good versus evil. We're beyond politics. We're beyond party. There is no wait and see as our as our Middle Earth, as our Erda, reaches a point of no return and dwindles and decays underneath us. If good people don't come together and destroy the wickedness in this world, then none of the stuff we used to fight about is ever going to matter again. And Jesus stands up as we fight among ourselves and yell back and forth. And Jesus says, I'll do it. But I can't do it alone. This is not just a church service. This is the high council. The high council of elders called together to create a plan of action against the growing darkness in this world. I love how the fellowship responds individually, right? We have this moment of you have my sword, which is different from you have my bow, which is different from you have my axe. I am going to join this fellowship, but I remain a dwarf in this community, right? That's the symbol there. They bring different and unique skills to this quest, and they do different things, and they have different talents. And the fellowship does eventually dissolve, and they go their separate ways. But they all are working towards the same thing still. And through the 3 novels and the travels and everything, they all come back together at the end. It all is about Frodo getting to this mountain to destroy this ring, no matter where they are or what they're doing. Sam and Frodo do not have the same experience as Aragorn the ranger or Legolas the elf or Gimli the dwarf. Pippin takes a different path than Merry, but they're all moving in the same direction. They're all focused on the same thing. We are called to higher things than the earthly, temporal squabbles of this world. We are in Christ's world now. We think in terms of life and death, and good and evil. We approach this table of Holy Communion, if you will, the mystery of this ritual and this sacrament, that we experience God's grace and God's forgiveness as much as we can understand it. We also come down as the acceptance of a commission. We come down and say, here I am. I am dedicated to this work. As we receive the bread and juice, for us, the body and blood of Jesus Christ, we give our pledge, we give our oath. We stand before Jesus, who has said, I'll do this, but I can't do it alone. And we say that if by my life or death I can serve you, I will. Whatever you have me do, wherever you have me go, I am yours.